Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at the HAOQIN TS03. This is a budget sports smartwatch that sells for around 55 bucks, and it has kind of an interesting red and black accent going on with its crown that makes it look a little bit more premium than it actually is. Although things that I do like about this model is, first of all, it has a fully laminated display, meaning that there is no gap between the tempered glass and the display underneath. It is using an IPS display that measures 1.3 inches diagonally, and the entire body of the watch is constructed out of metal, so it feels more premium again than the budget price here would imply. However, in terms of functionality, it's still relatively entry level. We are talking about just a fitness tracker, more or less, that has 8 sports modes, as well as built-in heart rate measurement, as well as automatic sleep tracking, but you won't find, say, a built-in GPS sensor. So if you're trying to track your route when running outdoors, you still have to rely on connected GPS via your phone. But again, the design here really is quite eye-catching, and we do have SpO2 blood oxygen monitoring as well. Here are the 8 modes more specifically that I can track, and in terms of water resistance, it's IP68. And in terms of battery life, it will last for around 5 days continuously on a full charge. And then we also have on the inside, of course, the watch itself, along with a magnetic charging cable, which is using these pogo contacts. So taking a closer look at the design of the TS03, I have to say that the construction quality definitely feels much more premium than the price here would imply. Again, the entire thing is constructed out of metal, including the bezels here on the sides, but also the entire frame connecting all the pieces together, and even the back portion that you are seeing here is made out of metal as well. That's a contrast with the majority of smartwatches opting to use plastic on the back. In terms of the menus and navigation of the watch, it is easy enough to navigate using your fingers. Touchscreen is responsive, but you can see here how the frame rates are definitely not the most fluid. So that's one area where they were able to cut costs a little bit. Probably with the processor, it's still going to be more entry level, so you can't expect buttery smooth transitions in terms of the frame rates, but everything does work. In terms of the main watch here, we can long hold for a few seconds to change the dial. It can hold up to 4 watch faces at a time. Just give it an extra second or so. This one looks equally as good in terms of showing off the colors and vibrancy of the watch face. Everything kind of pops, even though it's not a, again, AMOLED display, but the colors are still looking quite nice and contrasty. One more here, which is going to be a bit more simple and straightforward, and then another digital option, which is a bit more simplified with just a text going on there. So it really tries to take advantage primarily of these analog designs. Now we can swipe downwards to access the quick shortcut tray of being able to change the brightness of the display. Here's the minimum setting all the way to the maximum, the battery percentage remaining. One thing that we don't have here, by the way, though, is going to be a flashlight mode that turns the entire display white, for example, to illuminate subjects in the dark. So that's one software feature that maybe they can add in the future. Swiping up will take a look at your notifications, so any mixed text messages or social media messages sent over from the phone via Bluetooth will show up over there, and it will alert you with a buzz. Just like other basic smartwatches, you'll be able to see them just fine, but you can't reply to them. This watch doesn't have a built-in microphone, for example, but overall, easy enough to take a look at it at a glance. Swiping over on the left side, we have a carousel view of all the different applications one at a time, which is pretty convenient to access. And almost immediately, I have to say, there is a really interesting feature on here. There is a 2048 game. So this is the first time I've seen a smartwatch that has a built-in game. And it's not a bad idea, I have to say. And you can also take a look at your high score, things like that. So it is actually pretty fun. Just a very quick, simple game just to waste a bit of time if you are bored. But that's the only game that you get there. Weather information, you can take a look at the current condition for the day. If it's sunny outside, the range in terms of highs and lows, as well as the weather pattern for the kind of next week ahead will also be displayed down below that you can quickly scroll through to take a glance at. So pretty simple. Swipe over from the edge there to go back by one page. Shutter here will allow you to take images if you're connected to your phone via Bluetooth. This acts as a remote control. And then similarly with Music Player, you can also play and pause and skip tracks if music is played back on your phone, since the watch doesn't have built-in memory on its own to store music. And then under Others, you can also find some additional functionality, very basic stuff here like a stopwatch, as expected for most watches. And then alarm clock also allows you to turn on or off alarms directly on the watch, but you can't change the time of the alarms. That part you still have to use the companion app to set up. And then there's also a countdown timer, so either 1 minute all the way up to 2 hours. You can kind of run down, and then when the time stops, it will vibrate. And here are all the training modes or sports that you can track on here. You have to tap on start before it goes into the list. Running, cycling, badminton, basketball, football, swimming can all be found. If you want to start a session from here, you can tap on it, it counts down in 3 seconds, and then afterwards it's going to track your heart rate continuously during the entire activity. Now we can swipe over to the right to access the carousel list of features, such as one here for a pedometer, showing us number of steps we've walked. Accuracy here is alright, although I did find this watch to be on the conservative side. So if I walked 100 steps, it would typically count it as, let's say, 90 steps. So there's kind of a 10% margin of error. And then again here, we can take a look at our sleep from the past night. So if you're taking a nap at noon, it's not going to count it as sleep. And one thing I did notice is right now the tracking does seem to be maybe a little bit off. So I tried to sleep a little earlier than this, but I woke up during the night. But what's shown here is the time when I went back to bed until when I woke up again fully in the morning. If you are sleeping continuously, again, it does a decent job of giving you an estimate of hours slept as well as deep versus light sleep. We'll take a closer look at this information on the app later on. Heart rate monitoring also works just fine in terms of accuracy, very comparable to what the numbers I saw on a Amazfit smartwatch I was comparing it against. Our blood pressure, this one here is a little bit more hit or miss since it is very dependent on how your heart rate is doing. But if you're sitting relatively still after taking the measurement, let's say 2 or 3 times, you'll get a good enough approximation of how you're doing. And then over here we have also our SpO2, blood oxygen monitoring. This takes about 20 seconds to get a measurement, and you do have to be sitting still for it to get it correctly. But accuracy here also seems to be fair. Similar to other smartwatches these days, it has the sensor on board when I was comparing it. And then some of the other commonly accessed features that we saw in the full carousel of apps can also be accessed here, kind of one widget or screen at a time, although it doesn't seem to loop all the way around. So when it hits the MP3 player function here for controlling the music, it kind of stops and you have to go the other way back or tap on the main key here to return to the watch face. So the companion app that they're using is called DaFit, which is a generic one that we've seen on plenty of other budget smartwatches, and it connects to all of them essentially using Bluetooth, although it is relatively simple and easy to use, connects and refreshes data relatively quickly once you are linked, and it will tell you again the number of steps that you've walked, as well as a bit more stats related to time that you were active, distance converted, as well as calories burned in a larger view. The UI has definitely been improved compared to previous generations, and now it looks neat enough. And then under sleep, you can also check out the different stages of sleep, including restful, light versus REM, and also awake that you can take a look at, as well as your score. This watch does also measure your heart rate when you are sleeping as well, which is pretty neat, and it will show you an average there down below, as well as the proportion of time that you're spending on their different types of heart rate intensity. The middle tab here allows us to see if there's any firmware updates if we're connected, as well as setting up the aforementioned alarm clocks directly from here. If you want to find more built-in watch faces, and then here are some other options that you can download, and they're all free to push over, fitting a more sporty vibe or a slightly more clean look depending on your preferences. And it is a pretty nice list of all options that you can look through. They're all very colorful, which is great. Takes advantage of the bright display on this particular watch. Some of them are a little reminiscent of the Apple Watch, but overall, again, you get the idea. A pretty nice list, considering this is still a budget watch at the end of the day. And again, you can find plenty of options that you like to find and push over. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds to download and then to send over, but again, it's not too bad. The process is still relatively simple and straightforward. So that's more or less it as far as our hands-on review of the HAOQIN TS03 budget smartwatch. Again, in terms of functionality, this is not really anything new that we haven't seen before. However, what makes this model stand out a little more is really its build quality and design, which are both actually very attractive, especially the fact that the entire body of the watch here is made out of metal. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.